Good morning, Makoshu Tribal School. This is Cinnamon Bear here with Hancock Forest Management, the education forester. And first off, thank you for joining me on this little virtual field trip. Really, I just left my house a few blocks back that way and came for a little walk down by the river because today we are coming out to explore Cottonwood. And Cottonwood loves to grow near the water. Looks like we found some cottonwood. So right here behind me you can see a big grove of cottonwood trees. So go ahead and take a look up. These trees are the tallest deciduous tree on the west of the Mississippi. So that means of the trees that lose their leaves each fall and grow new ones back in the spring, this is the tallest tree basically on the west side of the United States. Cottonwoods grow really quickly, and they can reach 150 to 200 feet in height. So that's one way that you can identify them, is that they're going to be much taller than the other deciduous trees along the edge of the river. So if you look over this way with me, we are literally right by the river. You can see all sorts of evergreen conifers, right? And those are not deciduous. Those keep their needles or their green on all year round, and they just lose some needles here and there, kind of like how we lose our hair. We don't lose it all at once though. But up close, like right here, you can see these deciduous trees right behind me with no leaves. Those look like the cottonwoods, but those are actually a little bit different. This is an alder tree, and the main way that I can tell is by the difference in height. And then if I get a little bit closer, I'm going to notice that the alder has a reddish color bud, and it also still has the little cones hanging on and the catkins. So these are the alders. So the way that I could tell this is not a cottonwood, it's actually an alder, is by these buds, which are very reddish in color. Also, I'm noticing on these winter stems, we're also seeing the catkins. These are called catkins. These are edible. And also some of the little cones are still hanging onto the tree. So if I look up into this tree against that sky background, I can see little cones, little catkins, and some reddish coloring. And this tree isn't as tall as a cottonwood. So we're looking here, these really tall trees are the cottonwoods. We'll get a closer look at them later. And then this one right here, you might be able to guess this one, or you might know it. It has multiple trunks at its base. Usually has a lot of moss. And then as we look up against the sky at these wintertime branches, you can see some really big dead leaves here and there, but also a lot of the seed pods are still hanging on. And these are those little seed pods kind of shaped like helicopters. So this is actually a big leaf maple. Okay, so one more time, just taking a close up, because alder and cottonwood usually grow really close together. So if you look at this tree, right away we can tell this is an alder. It has these reddish, purpley red color buds. It has the catkins, which are great in soups. And it even still has some of its cones on. So this tree, while you're going to find it by the river, it grows quickly. It is not a cottonwood. So let's go take a look at cottonwood. Ooh, there's a bald eagle flying right down the river. You never know what you see when you get out of your house and go exploring. I wasn't too excited about going out in the cold today, but here we are, and we're having a lot of fun now that we're out here. All right, so I think we finally found it. The big cottonwood right here in front of us. So we're going to go take a look at this one. All right, so I think we have found a cottonwood. We're going to go through some of its identifying features. First off, it's close to the river, right here on the trail. Second off, it's very, very tall. It's definitely much taller than all the other deciduous trees around here. And then third, I see its bark is deeply grooved. And older cottonwoods get really furrowed or wrinkled or grooved bark. Now, the next thing I'm going to look at are the buds. On this tree, they're too high for me to reach, but I'm going to look on the ground right down here and see if I can find one for you. All right, let's hunt around for a dropped cottonwood branch, because cottonwoods drop their branches really easily in the wind. All right, everybody, we did a little bit of walking, but I found something really cool here right on the ground. So I'm going to give you a close-up and show you what we've got here. So right here on the ground is a cottonwood branch. It's a pretty big one that blew out of the tree in a windstorm. So another thing though, if you don't see any low down branches, you can look on the ground for the leaves. So even though it's winter, we're looking at half rotten leaves, that's okay. We can still see that this is that nice cottonwood leaf. It used to be a dark green on the top and a shiny silvery green on the bottom. They blow in the wind and they kind of rattle and shake with those different colors. They're really pretty. But they have a slightly serrated edge, so it's not perfectly smooth, but you don't see very sharp teeth like you would on the alder. So here's an alder leaf, and you can see the teeth definitely how pointy they are there. And they're a bit smaller. So we found what we think is the cottonwood really tall tree by the river. It had the deeply grooved bark. We've checked the mulch on the ground. These leaves are going to turn into nice soil for the other plants coming up in the spring. And now let's take a look at this branch that we've got either from the tree or on the ground below it. So right here, this is what we're going to look at. This is the cottonwood bud. So even though we've often thought that during the wintertime trees are dead, they're really not. And these trees already have their leaf buds. They're waiting. And so as it starts to warm up, the resin inside here, which is like an orangish red color, is going to start to drip out. You might even see a drip of it coming out of the bud on a nice warm sunny day, maybe in late February or March. But these are the cottonwood leaves. So these are the baby leaves. So it's really nice to harvest them after a windstorm when you get the big branches that have come out of the top of the tree and you get the bigger buds that maybe you wouldn't have been able to access. That's a nice little gift from nature. And if you haven't had a windstorm or finding them on the ground, you could also go to a tree that has branches down low. And you don't want to pick off every single bud from a branch because these are next year's leaves. And if you pick them all off, they're not going to have any leaves for this year. So if we open this up, you might be able to see that there's some little baby leaves wrapped up in here. And they're also covered in this very sticky, orangish, yellowish red resin. So you can see it getting stuck all over to my fingers. Look at that. It's magic. It's very, very sticky. So I would like to encourage you to get out and find a cottonwood tree, pull off a bud, squish it up, feel that stickiness. Also take a smell and even a taste if you want to be really brave. It doesn't taste really great, but they are edible and high in vitamin C. So this orangish resin, this cottonwood resin, is antimicrobial. It kills germs. And like I said, it's very sticky. So bees will actually come to the cottonwood tree and collect this cottonwood resin, and they'll take it back to their hive and they'll use it to seal up any holes so that wind and rain can't get in, but also so that other pests, little bugs don't get in. So it's going to kill any bacteria, viruses, and fungus and keep their hive safe and clean. So since we did find this big branch that blew out of the cottonwood tree recently, and it does have its buds on, we'll go ahead and collect any of these buds that look nice and that don't have any like black rotten parts on them. These ones at the tip are a little questionable because they catch a lot of rain. They tend to get more rotten. But if you want to see, I'm just grabbing the bud and pinching it, and it pulls right off because we don't want to get the woody base. We just only want to be collecting the bud. So if you look at these, but you can see I'm getting covered in this orange sticky resin. And that's okay. I'm going to, if it's bugging me, I can rub some dirt on it so it's not sticky. Or if I have my hand sanitizer with me, rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer will get that right off. So we're going to collect these up, like I said, and we're going to put them in a glass jar. And then towards the end of January, when we start really gathering the cottonwood bud, we'll put them in a jar once we get a full jar, and we'll cover it in oil. And then the oil, as we warm it up in a sunny window or a warm, really low warm crock pot, the oils will pull out the medicines from these resins. Because these resins, like I said, they're sticky and antimicrobial, but it also has a compound called salicin. And that's what they use to make aspirin. So salicin, this is our just natural medicine that before we had a store to go buy aspirin, we could just go to the tree, right? You can get it from the bark, you can get it from the leaves, and you can get it from the buds. And so salicin is really good pain medication and fever reducer, and it reduces inflammation or swelling. I would recommend using a plastic Ziploc baggie to gather these in. Because they're sticky. It's going to take a bit of time and work before we can fill a whole jar. But start watching the end of January. You might even notice the smell when you're down by a grove of cottonwoods. And on a warm day, you might even see a drip of orange oozing right out of the bud. And then you know it's ready. It's time to start gathering cottonwood. And you can gather these buds all the way, most likely through March. Once the leaves start opening up, you'll notice there's a lot less resin, less medicine. And at that time, we'd probably want to go to the inner bark or the big green vibrant leaves that are opening up. There's another branch blown by the wind, but these buds are looking brown, wet and soft. They're rotten and black inside. Okay, so we definitely wouldn't want to pick up those. One of the really cool superpowers of cottonwood is its fast growth. So it can go into an area where there's not nitrogen in the soil, and it can still grow because it has a special relationship with a bacteria. And the cottonwood brings the nitrogen from the atmosphere, the air, and down to its roots where this bacteria live. And the bacteria can turn the nitrogen into something usable in the soil for the cottonwood. And in exchange, the bacteria gets a little bit of sugar from the cottonwood. And then the cottonwood helps put the nitrogen back in the soil, its leaves dying back, creating mulch, so that there's more and more nitrogen for the next plants that will come into that area. And there goes the hawk. You don't want to pick all the buds off of a branch because those are all of its leaves for the next year. And the leaves are how it makes its food, right? So we want to make sure we leave enough leaves on the tree so that it can be healthy. Thank you, Cottonwood. All right, thank you, Muckleshoot Tribal School, for joining us on this little virtual field trip to visit and learn about cottonwood and do some exploring and get out there and get your sticky fingers. All right, have fun.